I'm back with another soap, and we are going to start off with adding our dry additives. We've got kaolin clay, and we've got colloidal oats. I will be adding these to the base oils, and I use a 1 tablespoon. It's more like a heaping 1 tablespoon of each of those. And then once we've got the dry additives into the oils, I'm just going to check on my milk and lye solution to make sure that it is all incorporating well together. And then here I'm going to add my sodium lactate to the oil mixture. We're adding the sodium lactate to the milk and lye solution. I add 3 teaspoons. And then I'm just going to check my temperatures. I like my temperature to be within 10 degrees of each other. So we got 79 for the lye solution and 94 for the oils. And then I'm going to set my lye off to the side, and I'm going to blend up the dry ingredients into the oils. Make sure that they are all incorporated. And then for this soap, I will also be adding some other additives here in just a second. And we're going to be adding a little bit of buttermilk powder. It is pretty clumpy, so I'm going to really give that a blend and help incorporate the buttermilk powder in with the oils. And then I have also decided to add some walnut shell powder. And I am just going to add, it's not a full tablespoon, probably a little over half of a tablespoon. And what walnut shell powder does is it helps with exfoliation and getting the dirt out of the cracks of your fingers. So that'll add some texture to the bar. And then I'm just going to check my temperatures again here. The lye solution did heat up a little bit more, which is totally okay. Now I'm going to add my lye and milk solution into my oils. And scraping out the container to make sure that I get all of that into my oil bucket. And we're done with that, so we'll set that off to the side here, and we are going to blend. The walnut shell powder can help speed up or thicken trace, so I don't blend it a whole lot, but I do want to make sure that it is emulsified. And then there, I am just checking to make sure that it has reached emulsification, which it hasn't, so I continue to blend a little bit more. And then I'm going to pour off a small amount of my batter into a smaller container. We are going to not be adding the fragrance to the smaller container, as the fragrance does discolor. I don't want this portion to be brown. So I'm just pouring that off. And then I'm going to add a little bit of titanium dioxide because I do want the smaller portion to be a creamy white color. And then to help with the brown discoloration, I'm going to add cacao powder to the bigger container. And then I'm going to blend up the small container, which is our white, to make sure that the titanium dioxide is dispersed evenly. And so we don't have any white pockets. And then I'll go ahead and blend up the cacao powder. This takes a little bit more because it wanted to clump and I didn't want any cacao powder clumps inside the final product. So I went ahead and blended this a little bit extra to make sure that we didn't have any clumps. Now this will turn a brown color in our final product. Right now it looks very green and ugly looking, but it will change. And then scraping off the stick blender just to make sure that I get everything off of it. And kind of seeing where we are at, we have reached a light trace there. Just a very, very light trace. And then here I'm going to weigh out my fragrance into the large container. Now this fragrance does accelerate, and it accelerates very fast. It does tell me that on the bottle as well. So I do have a plan to try and get it into the mold as fast as possible. But you will notice that I will not use my stick blender anymore. And it's a coconut and vetiver fragrance. I don't know if I pronounce vetiver right or not, but that's what I call it. To me, this fragrance kind of smells like a coconut, not like a coconut sunscreen, but it's got a very nostalgic coconut fragrance, and I really do like it. So I went ahead and mixed up the fragrance oil, and then I'm going to start by pouring in a small layer. I was hoping that I would be able to do a little bit of a drop swirl here, but that just was not the case because once I got my little bit of white in there, the brown batter did start thickening up quite a bit. And we'll come back in with the brown, and then here's where you can kind of see that it got really gloopy. And I ended up having to really scrape out the bucket into the mold as fast as I could before it started to solidify. And then I tried to get as much of it out of the container as I possibly could. And then now I'm going to just kind of tap it in there to try and avoid as many air bubbles as possible and try to get it even. And then here I'm going to throw that last bit of white on the top. And my white is still a little bit on the fluid side, so it wasn't too hard to get into the mold. And here I'm going to scrape out the entire white container and make sure that I don't leave any of the batter left inside the container. now I'm just going to tap it down and make sure that it is even throughout the entire top, mainly to try and avoid air bubbles. And then I want to tap my mold on the table to try and move the air to the top if there is any air bubbles inside the middle. And then texturing the top here. I was hoping that I could do a little bit of a swoop top and then have the brown color come in a little bit on the underneath side, but the brown wasn't pulling like I was hoping because it was so much thicker than the white. I just kind of figured maybe a different type of a swoop top would work for this one, so that's kind of what I went with. And then did a little bit of cleanup on the edges. And there we go. We have our coconut cream goat's milk soap. Thanks for watching.